We're glad that you joined us today. I'm Kimon Hines. I'm the host of the Ideas2Life podcast. And thought we'd do something different with our podcast now. We would have people not just be interviewed by voice. We wanted to see them and interact with them face to face, especially our next guest, Sarah McDugal. Sarah is a branding strategist. I'm kind of interested in what that means. She's an author, an amazing person, does a lot of marketing, media, tells her story. And today we're glad to have you, Sarah, on our podcast.
Thank you so much, Kimon. It is, when we were both at Fruition, I noticed you're wearing your Fruition t-shirt right there representing. When we were at Fruition in Houston, it was such a pleasure to talk to you, to get to know you a little better, and to interview with you after speaking there. I really enjoyed that. So thank you for following up and this opportunity to share with your audience and take some dialogue about the things I'm passionate about to those who are listening to you and looking to you for good content on how they can learn and grow. It's really a delight to be here.
Awesome. And I see some people are on already. Thank you for coming on. Brittany Wingfield, good to see you this morning. Sarah, so as you mentioned, we've communicated on social media before, but we finally had a chance to meet in Houston, Texas at Fruition. And you did an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
I mean, just your passion came through. And just as we talked this morning, I want you to kind of share with our listeners, what are you passionate about? What is Sarah McDugal passionate about?
That's a hard question for me to answer because I am passionate about kind of a broad cross-section of things. But if I look at the thread that ties them all together, the underlying foundation of what I'm passionate about is helping people learn how to live, engage, and do business with one face. And that includes foundational pillars like learning and articulating and discovering and then articulating your core values, learning how to make choices that you're not going to regret. I mean, we all have regret. We all have regrets. Regret is a simple word, but somehow it gets hard to say sometimes.
Regret. Yeah.
One of those tongue twisters. I mean, we all have things we wish we hadn't done or wish we hadn't said, or things where we look back in life and we wish we'd handled something differently. But I believe that understanding how the mind works, how God created us to function. I'm a person where faith really matters to me. And learning how to live more like God has called and asked me to live is a really important thing to me. So learning how to make choices without regret. Once we understand our core values, then making regret-free decisions. I'm also passionate about branding strategy and helping people tell their stories. And to me, that takes place. I'm sorry, I thought I had turned off my
Notification.
My notifications. I have it on Do Not Disturb. So I apologize. I really don't know. You got a
This is live TV, I guess. So this is what happens when you are on live television, or live Facebook.
Yeah, so I am going to just ask for your forgiveness, everybody.
Good morning. See some more people coming on in.
Well, that's good. That's good. So anyway, so back to what I'm passionate about, core values, making regret-free, stress-free decisions, helping people tell their stories in their branding strategy, whether that is a personal brand with themselves as individuals, as individual leaders, or branding strategy for a company or a product or a message. And, and then all of that ties together and overflows into something else that I do. And this is more of a passion ministry on the side based on my own personal experience. Sure. And that is mentoring and helping wives, particularly, although there are men who need help too, but I think men should help the men on this kind of thing. So I work with women in abuse recovery who've been in abusive relationships and help them to take back the ownership of their story.
Right.
And that's been taken away from them. So that's kind of something that's flowed out of what I've survived, but also it meshes really well with what I've done for years and years as a professional, and then giving that in ministry to women who really need it, who've had their identity taken away from them from abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So,
well,
a lot of stuff, but it all circles around wanting to live with one face to the world instead of multiple sets of values.
I'm very intrigued, and we're going to dig into that one face, what that means, and a little bit, because you wrote a book on it, so I want to hear about that. But it's interesting that you talk about all of the things that you're passionate about, even though they may be different, having a common tie-in. And so you mentioned core values. Before I ask you a question on that, those who are watching, just go ahead and share the video so that people who are a part of your feed can see and be a part of this. Go ahead and share it on your Facebook so that people can see. You mentioned core values and living with integrity. You did an exercise at Fruition. How important are core values? And for many people, they live them, but they don't know what their core values are. How, just in a little bit, tell us how important they are. Maybe give them a little snippet of how they can go about discovering them.
Well, I think your core values, they drive everything. And sometimes we don't want to look in the mirror and see what our core values are because they're not something we'd be proud of. I mean, if your core value is win at all costs, then you may not want to admit that, and you may be living by it, but you wouldn't want to articulate that because it's a toxic core value. But in general, I approach the subject of core values from the positive perspective, not the negative perspective. And I talk to individuals or corporate executive teams or whatever about discovering the things that drive them to make the decisions they make. Your core values aren't just the things that you like in life. They're not just the things that, kind of make you happy. Like you love to laugh. Well, that may be a core value for some people, but it really depends on whether or not it's something you can live and breathe without. For me, I have 6 core values. Okay. For a long time, there were 5. And, but those things can kind of grow and change sometimes. And about a couple of years ago, I added on a 6th one. So mine are loyalty, excellence, justice, integrity, and trust or transparency. And that acronym, LEJIT, I joke that it's what makes everything legit.
Yeah.
And then in the last couple of years, I've added an R on the end that stands for respect. I've realized that treating people with respect and being treated with respect is something I can't live without. I can't operate without that core value in my life. And so I was trying to figure out how to fit that into my little acronym that helps me remember them all. So I just added it on the end and I said, hey, it makes me even legitter. I know it's terrible, terrible grammar, terrible spelling, but I get a laugh out of it. And then I never forget the 6 things that I can't live without. And what makes the study and the discovery and articulation of your core values, I think, so deeply valuable is not only knowing them and knowing how they drive you, exploring the things that have shaped you into valuing those qualities, but also the freedom that it gives you as an individual, a leader, a company, a person, to get your priorities straight. Because once you have that core list of values, when something comes along that may be awesome, but doesn't fit the core values, it makes you guilt-free to say, no, thank you. That's a great thing. That's wonderful for someone else. I support that idea. Maybe it's not a bad idea. It's not like it's something negative or unhealthy, but it doesn't fit with where you are taking your life, your family, your business. And so you can have a stress-free response of saying, no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And that's very hard, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say no to things, but no can be an anointed word.
Wow. Yeah. So you need to have some things that drive your decision, that drive your yeses, but also drive your nos.
Yes.
Yeah.
And no, yes.
We're going to put a link at the end of this because you have an awesome resource on helping to discover your core values. So we want to make sure everyone who's watching this and sees the archive, you can just click on that link and you can get there.
I give it away. So
yeah.
Now remember, all the no's in your life make space for the right yes.
All the no's in your life make space for the right yes. That's tweetable. Yeah. So understanding your core values. Now, let's talk about branding. Some people, when they hear the word branding, they almost feel like this is self-promotion. This is putting on a show. This is presenting myself as something I'm not. Kind of explain to us how important branding is. And what does branding mean? Does everyone have a brand? Is it just some people who are popular to have brands? Like, what does it mean to brand yourself?
It is entirely possible that the concept and the catchphrases of branding have very much been birthed out of our celebrity, selfie, personal brand culture. And I'm not going to argue with that at all. But if you take it back from that down to a very elemental level, as an individual, let's talk individuals first, because any corporation is made up of individuals. So if we talk about individuals, by extension, we are affecting companies and corporations, right?
Okay.
We can talk about corporate identities, and then if you're not in a corporate identity, if you're not running a company, you feel like it doesn't apply to you. But that's not true. So let's talk about individuals.
Okay.
Any individual is known not only by what they say, but also by what they do, right?
Yeah.
And they're known most powerfully by whether what they say and what they do are in alignment. The fastest way to destroy trust is to say you're one thing or preach one thing and act another. This is why we have proverbs and sayings and TV shows and cartoons and comic strips about people who or companies or brands, products that advertise one thing and deliver another. I used to joke with friends about when someone promises the moon and delivers a tennis ball. That's not a good brand.
Right.
So talk about brand, talking about individuals, in a way, it's a contemporary way to be discussing what you are known for. Are you known for being someone who follows through on what they say? Are you known for making one kind of promise and delivering something completely different? Are you known for following through on a commitment that you've made, even if it's costly to yourself? What are you known for? What is the sum total of the experience of interacting with you? Now, whatever it is that you are known for, the sum total of the experience of interacting with you, that's your brand. Whether you are a product, a message, a TV show, a corporate organization, a nonprofit organization, a ministry organization, or an individual person. And so when we talk about brand and branding strategy, it's so much more than just your logo.
Right.
Your profile picture, the sign on the outside of your building, the way you shake hands. All of those things may be bits and pieces, are not your brand. Your brand is the experience of interacting with you. And I want to make one side comment. When we talk about living with one face, this means that you are committed to one set of values no matter who you are hanging out with. Your core values, the way that you make, it doesn't change based on your environment.
Right.
That does not mean, I want to take some of the pressure off. That does not mean that you don't have a public life and a private life. Right. It doesn't mean that everything in your private life needs to become public consumption and just out for the public to feed on. It doesn't mean that you are putting pressure on yourself to be perfect. You grew up because you're human. you're committed to following it through to the other side to make it right.
Right.
It means that when you make a mistake, when you make the wrong choice, when you were uninformed about something, when you jump to conclusions, when you just mess up, you own it.
Yeah.
Work through it. You communicate about it, because that is following the core values of someone who has integrity, of someone who works with excellence, of someone who is reliable and dependable. I write in my book about a company out of New York that makes amazing professional workwear for women. It's designed by women, made for women, and they are a high-end price point for the average professional woman. The name of the company is Project Gravitas, and they have incredible work ethic and customer ethic. For example, one time they told me a story, the CEO told me a story when I was interviewing her for my book, and one customer had bought a dress and written back that some of the threads came out in one of the seams or something like that. It was a small issue, and they had an opportunity to either tell her it was her fault or her problem, ask her, well, how did you wash it, or something like that, or to replace the dress, or to ignore it completely. So they were faced with a consumer damage control kind of problem. Their choice was to pull everybody from, like, it sounded like they pulled people from the administrative headquarters, like the C-suite offices. Everybody went to the warehouse. They pulled every garment in that model to check every garment for loose seams. And then they had their customer service department call every person who had bought that model of dress, that particular dress from that batch of construction, that sewing batch, and ask them if they'd had any problem with that dress, and offer, if they had, to replace it for free.
Wow.
I mean, that is some incredible commitment to making sure that the quality of their product is beyond question. So instead of trying to cover themselves or make sure they didn't lose any quick money in the moment, they gained, because when you pay several $100s for a dress, which is the price point of their garments, you want that item of clothing to last a long time. You invested in that.
Right.
So the woman who bought that dress is going to be talking about her purchase, either because she spent $300 on the dress and the seams came loose, or because she's sitting around brunch with all of her professional girlfriends and she's telling them how the company called her back, replaced it for free, and called everyone else who had that dress to make sure they were okay too.
Yeah.
How you react, it's not the question of whether you're going to be talked about or whether something like that is going to affect your reputation. It's the question of what story people will be talking about based on what values you have. So we can take that and we can pull out of that applications to us as individuals too.
Okay. Right.
That's not just, I'm using a corporate story from an organization, a company that I admire highly and that I think very well of. But it's the same kind of thing with us as individuals. There's no way that you're going to be perfect for the rest of your life just because you write down and articulate your core values. That's a fix all your propensity to human error for the rest of your life.
Right.
There's going to be times when you hurt friends' feelings. There's going to be times when you overreact to a situation. The question is, what are you going to do after it? Are you going to do the next right thing?
Yeah.
And that what you become known for.
That is good. That is good. So your brand is what you're known for and the story people will tell after interacting with you.
Absolutely. And your logo and your letterhead and the sign by your front door, or the way you present your name, the way you shake hands with people, all of those things play into that total experience of interacting with you.
Mm-hmm.
But standing alone, none of those make your brand.
Yeah.
It's actually a very biblical thing.
Tell us
about it. Well, when you think about it, when people interacted with Jesus or the apostles, they came away with a total experience of emotional support, spiritual support, feeling either rebuked for the sins they refused to admit or confess, or feeling that they had just been in the presence of someone who cared about them more than anyone had ever cared before. But regardless of where they were at in that interaction, there was a profound sense, anytime you interacted with Paul or Peter or James and John or Jesus Christ, there's this profound sense that you were interacting with someone who very, very clearly knew who they were and what they stood for, and who cared about you. Yeah. They cared about you enough to speak the truth, whether that was the truth in healing or the truth in rebuke or whatever the situation may have called for. You were profoundly cared about. Yeah. And they didn't change their message based on who they hung out with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a great analogy to help us kind of understand just with branding, because we can look at it in such a negative way. It's putting on a face. And you're saying, no, it is living with one face.
It's stripping off the masks and living with one face. It's not putting on a face. It's figuring out who you are between you and God so that there are no masks.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say we're talking now. Someone is, and by the way, those of you who are watching, you're watching a Facebook Live broadcast of the Ideas to Life podcast. You can go back and watch it and listen to it. We'll tell you the details later. But someone on this, and if you have a question, those who are watching, you can go ahead and just post it there in the comments. But Sarah, someone comes to you and says, okay, now I want to build my brand. What's one of the first steps you take them through? I don't want you to give away your business for free, but just kind of help us understand it.
Well, thank you, Kimon. The first thing I do is take them back down to the foundational basics, and that is discovering their core values. A lot of people know them, but they've never articulated them and written them down. And when I do that, that's like a 4-hour session. Okay. When I do that and I take someone through that, it's very intense. And I know one of my clients once told me that she always thought that certain aspects of her personality, her personal identity, were things that she needed to keep out of her business because she's an individual entrepreneur. And after going through the, hey, Orlando, I see you popping up there. Sorry. I just totally lost my train of thought there, man. Anyway, so yeah, one of my clients, she told me that after going through this core values assessment, she realized that the things she had been trying so hard to keep out of her brand were actually the things that made her the most unique and the most marketable as an individual entrepreneur. And so she felt the freedom after going through the core values assessment to build on her one face instead of trying to put on another face to make herself more appealing. Right. She realized what makes her most appealing is who she authentically is. Yeah. So I start with helping anyone, whether it's a company or personal branding, because I have a product for personal brands too. So whatever the brand is, starting with the core values assessment, clearly articulating who you are, why you exist, and what you stand for so that you can move forward with those parameters. It's kind of like laying down the rails. The train can't move forward if there's no railroad track. Yeah. This is the track that guides you along and keeps you from running off the rails. Yeah.
I have a few more questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, and then we go on into, how is it going to look and what is your feel and how are we presenting you and what social media platforms are the best thing for you and how do you communicate your message and all of that. But we start with the rails.
Yeah. When we talked in Houston, one of the things that I left impressed with is you want people to discover who they are first. Yes. So that when they share, they are sharing authentically. This is who I am. And everything that represents them, their graphics, everything tells the same story that people, if they were to meet them in person, would be like, oh yeah, I know them because everything that I've seen about them told the same story.
Exactly.
Now you've been your company. How long ago did you start? And kind of just tell me what prepared you in terms of your education, your experience to get this business.
So I started my company at the beginning of 2012, and before that, I had worked in the nonprofit sector for nearly a decade. I started working full time in the nonprofit sector in my last year of grad school, and did that up until I had my first child, and then kind of took a little time off. And I had my second child a year and a half later, then started working from home again, and that's when I started my company. So it's been a little while. And as far as, education and experience, oh my word. In something like this, I think like many entrepreneur and authors and speakers and people in our kind of lines of work, on all your life experience, not just that one degree that seemed so relevant. So I didn't go to school for marketing. Everybody assumes I got my media degree or my marketing and journalism degree, and I didn't. I started in middle school as a TV show host for a global satellite Christian television station, for a teen TV show.
Yeah.
And learning a lot about video production, kind of by osmosis, just being in that environment. In high school, I did door-to-door sales for all kinds of things. And in door-to-door sales, you learn how to read people. You learn how to pick up about people and how to quickly and rapidly connect with them and find common ground. In college, my first year of college, I worked in a printing press. Well, now and even though that was 2 decades ago, even though that was a long time ago,
that's a little while.
I can talk to printers about the weights of paper and what kind of process they're using and how we're laying color down for when we're talking about print media for a client's branding collateral and their assets. I took an English degree in college, a college recruiter, and then at Southern Adventist University started their business school's first SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise, business team, a competitive team that focuses on teaching entrepreneurship. But I wasn't in the School of Business. I was in the School of English, and went to Andrews and did grad school there for administration and international development. And so you have a very, have you seen those little memes about what you think the path to success looks like?
Yeah,
and then the goal of what it actually looks like, just like loop-de-loops and all piled in on each other. That is so true. I have been blessed with a wide variety of experiences that I can draw in order to manage teams of niche professionals. When I started my company, working with video teams and graphic design teams and other aspects of production, because those are not my areas of distinct expertise, but knowing enough about all of them, work with those individuals to create the kind of products that clients want.
Yeah, it's so interesting, as I've interviewed different people, hearing this story where I did this and I picked up this piece of knowledge and I did something else and I picked up some more learning. And there is a value to understanding and just realizing that every experience you go through, whether even formal or informal, you learn something on this journey of life.
If you are open-minded and if you are willing to be teachable, you can draw something, even if it is what not to do, from every experience. That
is really good. That was worth the price of admission, everyone. So we have our first question. Go ahead, Sarah.
No. Keep going. That's good.
We have our first question. It is from a friend of mine named Fred Nichols, who is from Canada. And
hey, Fred.
His question is, I've just created a marketing, branding, and promotions department at my church in order to build the brand and mission of the church? What are some of the pitfalls in the initial stages that you think we should look for?
Wow, Fred, that is an excellent question. And because it is church specific, that means that there's going to be a bit of different dynamics. So initial pitfalls in the initial stages that I would want to be aware of. One of those would be trying to please everyone, which means that ultimately you will not be a brand, you will just be bland. If you try to make everybody perfectly happy, you're going to end up communicating nothing, or at least what you communicate will not be interesting enough to keep bringing people back. So you have to be willing to take a few risks. It's a church, so you want to make those moderate risks, but you also need to know where your support base is. And how much freedom, where your parameters are, how much freedom do you have to play with creativity and possibilities without getting completely shot down or shut down. So I would find that out from the people who have placed you in charge of this department, and find out what your parameters are going to be so that you can try to play well inside of those parameters without endangering the overall future of this department of those parameters too quickly or too early on before you've got some stuff. In that, I would highly suggest downloading the values discovery that I have for free that we'll tell you about later, and taking some of those key people with you through that process. And that way you can try to get everybody on the same page as to who you're talking to, what your target audience is, what message you're trying to communicate, so that you have a sense of clarity fairly early on. And beyond that, give yourself some grace, because if your church has not had a media and promotions department before, there's going to be a learning curve. And there's going to be a learning curve not only in you and the team that are doing it, but also in the audience that is receiving it. So give everybody a little bit of grace, or a whole lot of it, and a lot of humility to navigate the process of figuring out what voice fits best for your church, without being too proud and unwilling to take feedback, but also without being too much of a pushover and letting everyone's ideas water down the vision that God has given you for this project.
Yeah, you said something. If you don't have a clear direction, you won't be a brand. You'll be bland. That's
on that, let me throw something else out at you there, Kimon. Good brands attract.
Mm-hmm.
Great brands repel.
Okay. You got to tell us.
Attract. Great brands repel.
Okay.
So a good brand is going to be interesting enough to attract an audience.
Okay.
A great brand is going to be authentic and clear in its stance enough to drive away the people who were never your audience in the first place.
It's good. Yeah. So
if you as entrepreneurs, and this takes a bit of a different play out in church, because a church ministry, that's a different ballgame. Mm-hmm. So let me speak to entrepreneurs and individuals right now. As entrepreneurs and individuals, you can end up spending an awful lot of your time trying to decipher which potential clients or interests are your A interests, which ones are really going to make you business, which ones are really for you to communicate with and follow through on, trying to qualify those. A very strong brand, a great brand, will help you pre-qualify those by not attracting the people, by repelling the people who are not your audience in the first place. Now, in the gospel, when we're talking about a church, we have to look at that a little bit different. The gospel is about reaching as many people as are willing. But in ministry, maybe outside of a church, in specific ministries, it's okay to say, hey, our target audience is XYZ, and if this doesn't fit you, then you are not our target audience. And to have the courage to build a great brand, which may divide. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay, because that means you're going to spend all your time focused on the people you are meant to work with, the people you are meant to serve or to provide a product for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Those of you who are watching, if you want to continue adding questions, we're going to give that link at the end for you to get that values resource. Yeah. Sarah, you wrote a book, One Face. Tell us about the book. Tell us where we can get it. And can you just share a little bit about your writing process? Because someone on here might have a book in them that they need to get out.
Right. Absolutely. Well, everybody has a different process. And I firmly believe that the same process does not necessarily work for all people. So about my process, for me, I am a writer. I blog, I edit. I've been writing since I was a young girl. But writing a book was daunting. I mean, just like, how do you write a book? Writing a blog post, that's different. Writing a chapter, that's one thing. But just the idea of trying to structure out a book, even though I love strategy and structure, it was so overwhelming. So what I did, my process, was to first recognize with humility that I may have some good ideas, but in order for people to really hear my good ideas, they need to hear them from people who are a lot bigger than me. And so instead of just trying to write my book, and tell the world what I think, I decided to seek out individuals who were living with one face, who were known for being willing to make the tough calls, which might even result in a shortfall in the present, in order to build long-term sustainability based on character and principles of integrity. So I sought out those individuals and I interviewed them and got their stories. Gotcha. And instead of trying to write it all down and make sure I didn't mess up their voice and the way they presented their story, I turned on a recorder and I got their permission to just record the interview. And that allowed me to be fully present with them, asking them questions and drawing out their story. I had a transcriptionist transcribe all of those. And once I had those transcribed through, and I it for readability. I added my own stories. I worked on pulling out the principles and the concepts from those individual stories, those interviews, and created all of that content, reformatted it into a book. For me, I don't do well with a blank page. Some people are phenomenally creative with a blank slate. Clean white wall. I can't do that. I just freeze. I get stuck. But even if there's just something on the page, I can work with that. Right. So knowing that about myself heavily affected my process, and interacting with those brilliant minds. Some of them are household names, people that you would know from watching the news, and interviewing them, sitting at their feet, learning from them, and then weaving my own experience and the things that I believe God has told me into that. That was the essence of my process. Awesome.
It's interesting that as I listen to you every time, story is so much a part of, you're big into knowing your story, your core values, connected with that, but then telling your story. And I'm glad that your book focuses on stories as well.
Yeah. And besides, it's a lot more fun to read a story, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, and I can sit there and just be dry and throw out facts all day long, but there's a million other books that have already done that.
That's right. Sarah, give me your website. Yeah, give me your website because I want to put it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's real simple. It's just my name.com, www.McDugal, SANCDUGAL.com. And from there, you can click over to my book website, which is livewithOneface.com.
Okay.
You can also read on there and read my blogs. I blog a lot about living with one face, a lot about leadership and self-discovery through recovery from abuse situations, toxic work environments, or living with narcissists. Those are things that encounter at some point in life on a day-to-day basis. And those, it's easy. It's easier to live with one face when you're in a really supportive work environment or a really supportive marriage or a really supportive home environment. But it's when we're working with people who are really toxic or who are very narcissistic or who are very destructive, that's when it becomes very hard to live with one face. So I like addressing those types of situations because that's where we're very tested.
Yeah. That's
where it becomes a matter of emotional life or death in our health. Yeah. Mentally and emotionally, business as to the choices they make.
Right. Now, those who want the resource on core values on your website, what's the link? Which page should they go to?
That's sarahmcdougall.com/free-stuff. Go to the free stuff. And
I'll put that right. Free
yeah.
dash. So sarahmcdougall.com. We'll make it easy for them. /free
dash stuff. And there's a final slash on the end, I think.
Got it. All right. So those of you who are watching,
there's a free dash stuff.
You know what? Dash. I did the wrong thing.
Y'all don't click on that yet.
Sarah
McDougall.com/free-stuff.
There we go.
Perfect. That's right.
Go get that.
There's the values discovery and there's a masks discovery to learn how to shed the masks that may be hiding you from living with those core values.
Yeah. And everyone watching this, you have to take that core values test. I took it. Sarah led us in the exercise in Houston. It was amazing. Sarah, before we let you go, let's say you have a minute with someone to tell them the most important thing you've learned through starting your own business, writing a book. What's just the most important lesson you can leave with us in this time?
I believe that the most important lesson that I've learned along the way is twofold. One, take the time to know yourself first. Know what it is that builds a fire in your belly and find ways to pursue incorporating that thing, that subject, that passion into your viable business. And the second aspect of that is to never take moral shortcuts.
Wow.
Because it never pays off in the end. Becoming known for trustworthiness, becoming known for taking the high ground, becoming known as the business in your genre that goes the extra mile, it may take longer, but you're looking to build longevity, not a quick profit at the expense of your reputation.
Yeah, that's good.
So, and in that, learning how to make regret-free decisions. Of course, if you want a formula for that, you have to go buy my book.
Here we go.
There. We didn't even get there today. But yes, know what builds a fire in your heart and never take moral shortcuts.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This has been a great interview, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Simone, and the invitation. It's great to know you better.
Yeah. And those of you watching, I want to invite you. This is you've watched a live video presentation of our podcast, and we have those in the archive. But I want to just invite you to go check out the other podcasts and subscribe to them. I'm going to put a link for you there so you can check them out. But it's KimoneHines.com/Ideas2Life. And whatever platform you're on, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, they're all there. Subscribe and hear other wonderful stories. Sarah's story is going to be there. But I wanted to inspire you because I believe you have an idea inside of you. You have a story to tell. You have a ministry, a business to pursue. We want to inspire you, inform you, give you some tools to get out there and make your idea come to life. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.